Welcome to the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast, brought to you by wowdigital.com, your best place for nonprofit websites and design, now including fractional CMO support. Tired of posting content that goes nowhere? Max Kringen reveals how mission-driven storytelling can turn random posts into genuine relationships. Tune in and learn how to craft content that builds trust, drives action, and keeps your audience coming back. Welcome to the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast. I'm your host, David, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about storytelling, going human first, and probably a little bit of digital strategy. And I've got Max Kringen here with me. Max is the founder and chief storyteller of Tellwell, which is a Fargo-based creative studio helping mission-driven organizations tell stories that spark connection, build trust, and ultimately drive some kind of action. Max, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for having me, David. I am so excited to be here. I've become a fan of the pod and a fan of Wow Digital over the last couple of months. And so I'm really excited to be here and chatting with you.
Awesome. So let's jump right in, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nonprofit leaders, they tend to struggle to turn any kind of data and impact information into content that actually connects, is compelling, and kind of connects emotionally with their ICP, their ideal customer profile. Sounds a little bit businessy, but we need to have personas and avatars so that we know
Absolutely
who we're talking to and what drives them and what motivates them. So what is like human first storytelling, and how can nonprofits kind of move towards that?
That's a great question. And I think the thing that gets me really excited about it is a really significant shift from how people think today about what they think impresses a donor or that customer. As you think about that ICP, there are different things that impress different people. But a kind of universal truth, I believe, is that people connect with stories before they connect with stats. You have to earn the opportunity to share those nerdy stats because people don't remember stats. Our brains just aren't built to remember them. And so one of the things that I always encourage folks to do is think about a story that actually connects. Through that, we use a tool called narrative transportation to really say, here's the story of Maria. Maria was down on her luck and she was really struggling to feed her kids. Because what we're doing when we do that is we say, hey, there's a person that sounds like, smells like, feels like you, or potentially like you. And so you can put yourself in their place. So in this case, anybody who's a mom, anybody who has a kid, anybody that has the empathy for somebody like that can suddenly see themselves in the place of Maria. So what we encourage folks to do is start with story, right? Define your empathy before you jump into your authority and really back off the facts. Because the facts, how many pounds of food you're donating, how many nights a year, you're providing shelter, those are great stats, but nobody cares yet, right? Nobody knows, and nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, that old adage. I think it's wildly true, especially as we're talking to our nonprofit brothers and sisters, because frankly, especially donors don't care yet. But if they can picture themselves in your story, if they can see themselves in that character, in that ICP, magical things can happen.
I love the idea that you're talking about connecting and engaging emotionally. Nobody is going to care. For everybody listening, all right? Nobody's going to care about your cause unless you give them a compelling reason to. And it's the storytelling that engages them, because when you have conversations with people, when you're sitting in a presentation, if there's something that's a visual or an idea or a topic or a thought that comes at you and you hear it and you're like, okay, this resonates, you start to pay more attention. It starts to gauge things that have happened in your life, in your past or present. And, maybe it's related to a goal or vision that you have, and you can start to connect with it. And it's that connection that's going to drive the empowerment to get people to actually do something, whether it's volunteer, come and support with money or time, whether it's join a board of directors, whether it's participate. So actually even maybe signing up for a program or coming to an event, right? Or even just hitting a share button, or a like, right?
Oh, man. Oh man, David, what you're talking about is really allowing your donor or your volunteer or whoever it is to see themselves in your story, right? We talk about this as sparking curiosity. And so if we can spark curiosity, we are then starting to earn the trust to go into that educate phase about how to get involved with clear calls to action and things like that. But what you're talking about is sparking curiosity, and it is the most powerful way to invite somebody into your story. Spot on.
So storytelling, I think I've heard you talk about it in seasons, like introduce, educate, engage, remind, right? So in terms of a framework, how can organizations create content with purpose instead of just like scrambling week to week? Like we were talking just before we hit record here about how we have a cache of episodes so that we're not scrambling the week of to get something done. I saw like this big smile kind of show up on your face when I was saying that. So how can nonprofits kind of go in that direction?
If you're a nonprofit listening, you're probably nodding along right now because you've been there where you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to post today? What am I going to post this week? I just need to get something out. And so the way that we've shifted that is to really take how people interact. If you think about any good relationship that you've been in, likely there were 4 parts that you went through. First is introduction. Right? You have to understand, like, could this thing be for me? Then you go into education where you start to figure out, where do we align on some different things? Like, where do our interests align? Where do our values align? And some of those types of things. Eventually, there has to come a call to action, right? That invitation into the story. And then finally, any good relationship, any long-sustaining relationship has this idea of remind. Remind people that you love them so that way they remember that they love you too. And so I would love to tell you that this came to me in just like a stroke of brilliance or like it came to me in a dream. But the reality is I was kind of BSing with a client and they're like, so how do you build your content calendars? And I was like, oh, well, and then really started to think about our trust framework. Introduce, educate, engage, and remind. And what was starting to come out, and I'm a verbal processor anyway, was this really natural alignment with seasons. And then I was like, wait a second, spring is about sparking curiosity. It's all about like opportunity for new beginnings. Summer is about building trust. And so we're in the Midwest in the United States. And so summer is all about like the growing season. And it's like tending to your crops and making sure that they understand like they are loved and they are cared for and we are cultivating them. We're making sure that the weeds are pulled. Our gardens are beautiful. And we have to do those 2 things before we get into fall, which also happens to align with major giving seasons. Right? Like in the US anyway, and I think this is true for Canada too, like some wildly large percentage of giving happens in the 4th quarter of the year. And so fall is our time for engagement. It's our time for calling people to action. It's our time for inviting them into the story. And then what I've seen happen way too many times is after that big fall giving season, after that big push, after you've raised all of this money and you're like so excited, then we just go dormant, right? January, February, March, we're just like, whew, well, thank God that's over. And then you're like, what do I do next? But I think that there's a huge opportunity in that winter season for that remind phase of a relationship. Remind people that you love them so that way they remember that they love you too. And so that is really our time to say, hey, we did this together. I don't have another ask for you right now. I just want to tell you, you matter to this story. You're a part of this story. I'm grateful for you being a part of this story. And your donation has this specific outcome, right? And I think as we think about those in the seasons, our bodies are also started to get like a little bit nerdy about this. And then I had some friends and I was like, does this feel right? And then I have an extremely nerdy friend who's like, actually, our bodies are like physiologically more inclined to be ready for those things at those different seasons. Because in the spring, we're so excited about the sun coming out again for long periods of time that we're like, hey, there's opportunity for new things. Summer, we feel very safe, and so it's our time to welcome others into it. Fall, when we're getting those good smells and like the cookies, we're feeling very generous. And winter is just when we want to hunker down with a good book. And so it's a great time to remind somebody that you're in the story. And so we call that our seasons of story.
Of that idea. It's really, really awesome. For anybody that's looking at this, The podcast is on video. Also, everybody, you can go to YouTube, you can get on Spotify video, etc., etc. But on the wall behind me, I have our content calendar. And I'm going to be thinking about how to rework this to build in some of that framework for sure in the coming year when we do the content planning and stuff. I think it's really important for the nonprofits out there to be talking about the impact, right? People want to donate to a cause that's doing good things. Being able to tell the story helps dramatically with getting people to understand the work and the value of what you're doing and to get them to want to be a part of that. To that point though, when you're going out and you're communicating, you're sending your emails, you're doing posts, whatever, not everything should be an ask for money, right? There's education that needs to go out. We need to provide insight. We need to stay in touch and let people know, yes, absolutely. End of December is like biggest giving season. You've got this year anyways in 2025, you've got Giving Tuesday, which is beginning of December. And then you've got end of year giving for people to get their tax receipts, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And January, February is the perfect time to talk about how that is going to have a positive impact and tell the stories of who those are going to impact.
Spot on. And I think one of the things that we know about so many nonprofits is how like understaffed, under-resourced they are. And so even thinking about that as a framework could feel really intimidating to say like, does that mean that I have to have 12 stories or I have to have 52 stories that I have to be like figuring out like how they fit into each other? And I think about this less as like we have to have different stories, but it's more about the lens at which we look at that story through. And so that could mean maybe we're talking about one story per quarter, but we go a little bit deeper with it each month, right? And we talk about it, we look at it through that slightly different lens, through whichever part of that relationship or trust framework that we're in. But the other thing that we can do is to feel like we want to keep our content fresh. We could literally take 4 stories and share them through that different lens, through the lens of curiosity, through the lens of trust, through the lens of engagement and call to action, and through that lens of remind or like gratitude. And we could do that and really have kind of 4 stories that keep our content fresh every single week. And it keeps us interested too. I think one thing that we run into as marketers, and I would be curious, David, if you run into this, like I'm convinced everybody knows who we are, what we do, how we do it, and why we do it, right? I'm convinced of it. But the reality is, and I heard this on another podcast, we are a period in the book of somebody else's day, right? We're not even a period in a sentence of somebody's day in the book. They have so many other things going on. And so I think as nonprofit marketers and leaders and fundraisers, what we sometimes get into is this idea of like, they already know our story, I don't need to tell it again, or I don't want to like inundate them. What I can tell you with such confidence is that they probably haven't heard the story. If they're tuning in again, they want to hear the story because they're that bought into you. And nobody is going to get annoyed with hearing more about the impact that your organization is having and the people that it's affecting, especially when I know that I'm a part of that story as a donor or a volunteer or an advocate.
I think you're spot on with that. Absolutely, Max. And organizations need to know, their business owners, organizations, you, me, like our business, our organization, that is the center of our world, right? We live it, we breathe it, we do it all day, every day, right? That is not how the outside world perceives us. Right. And we need to remind them. Maybe not every email is like, hey, we do this, right? No, but sprinkle it in.
Absolutely. And there are some really easy ways to do that, right? If you're familiar with like Simon Sinek's Start With Why, there are probably 4 to 6 different ways that you can take a why statement and craft it in a way that feels very natural and engaging. If you're a fan of Donald Miller and the Story Brand Framework, he gives you sound bites and is so excited to be showing some of those different ways to be sharing those little bits and bobs in sound bites. You know, we have our own framework, which is also based on the hero's journey, and it gives you different sound bites for different seasons and different ways and different reasons. So you're spot on. People want to connect with you. What they don't want is they don't want to be yelled at, right? They don't want to be talked to. They want to be talked with. They want to be invited into the story.
Absolutely. Come along with on the journey, right? And I loved your idea of telling the story, different seasons, making it a multi-part, like follow follow somebody. If you are helping bring clean water to third world country, awesome. What's a day in the life like through the course of a year? You can tell that story through all of that, through the farming, the agriculture, the children, the friends, the cleaning, the nutrients. There's so much there. And I think a lot of nonprofits are just kind of stuck, to your point, like they've told the story, why tell it again, right? And I think there's ways that they can do that by splitting it up, chunking it up, making a long form video and cutting it up into 10 different segments and one a week. You've got 10 weeks of content, right? Or social posts, that kind of stuff. And I don't think a lot of nonprofits are thinking that way. So in your opinion, how can they kind of step off of the treadmill of how do we do this and start building a rhythm that actually drives some kind of action for them?
Yeah. First of all, it's really sage advice that you just shared. And second, we talk about it as like a content hamster wheel. Feels like it's impossible to get off. And I think one of the biggest opportunities for folks is to take a piece of content and figure out what are the 10 to 15 different ways that I can be using it. And that can feel daunting, but we have some magical tools, some like really incredible tools at our disposal for free or wildly inexpensive. Using tools like ChatGPT or Claude, Gemini, or in the Copilot, if that's for some of our nonprofit friends, you can take any of these pieces that you're doing and ask it to create different versions of it for you. And so what I always encourage people to think about is like, how do you take that one piece of content and have that content have enough substance to get 5 to 10 to 15 uses out of it. There's some really cool tools like Descript or Opus Clip that allow you to take a video as an example, because like a video is a huge investment, right? For our nonprofit clients, we're asking them to spend, starting at $10,000, and sometimes it goes all the way up to $25,000 or $50,000. And one of the most painful things, both as a creative director who creates videos, but also I would imagine for like the fiscal responsibility of a nonprofit, is to see that expensive video that we put so much time, effort, energy, and love into, to watch it go over to YouTube to die. That is the most painful thing, and you will never see your return on it. And so, to your point, take that one video, make 10 to 15 different clips out of it, and then you can even start to look at that clip through the lens of trust, through curiosity, through engagement, and through remind. Like you can look at it through that lens and say, hey, do you remember this person? Because of your gift, we were able to do X, Y, and Z. And so you can even use some of those same clips over and over again. And it's just about getting into that rhythm, not necessarily of content creation, but content curation as much as anything.
One of the things that we do with our clients is we shoot, after we launch projects, testimonial videos. And we have our script. We've got like, here are the 11 questions we're going to ask. And what we've been doing is taking question number 6 about the feedback module or whatever. We take the clips of our different clients talking about this thing, and we made another video talking about that function. If you think of your nonprofit, you're helping people. Somewhere there is a human that is being impacted positively by the work that you're doing, whatever it is that you're doing and how you're serving it. Get some testimonials from them, put together some questions that you ask the same way. Then you can grab snippets of them, and it doesn't have to be a 15-minute collaboration video of question 5 from everybody, but you can turn that into like 6 or 7 40-second videos.
Yeah,
right?
Please, for all that's holy, do not make a 15-minute video of your client and saying great things about you, because we remember 3s, right? If you think about it, people have the ability to remember about 3 things. And so you're like, what do you mean 3 things? Okay, David, if you're on fire, what are you going to do?
Up, drop, and roll.
Bingo. This one doesn't always land. I'm from a rural town where we had a lot of trains. When you approach a train track, do you know what to do?
No.
When we did farm safety, right, it was stop, look, and listen, right?
Okay.
And so it's 3. We simplify those really complex things down to 3 things because it's what we can remember.
And so for anybody out there, if you're remembering phone numbers, right? My 416-708-8320, like you learn the stuff in 3s. There's pricing, sales, handling, where you're dealing with tiered pricing. You've got low, mid, high, right? Groups of threes are what works.
Yeah. And so you even take that example of testimonials. It could be the exact same topic, but don't give more than 3 perspectives in it, because the moment that you do, then it starts to feel like a list and people tune out, right? Because people have to like almost protecting themselves from information overload. Right? I don't know what the stat is today because it changes daily on how many marketing messages we see. And so when we can create clarity, when we can say, hey, these are 3 examples of X, Y, and Z, people are like, oh, okay, I got time for 3. The moment you're like, hey, we have 10 examples of how great we are, people are going to be like, oh, hell no, I don't have time for that. So 3s are your friend.
Okay. So we're talking about content. We're talking about producing engaging content. We're talking about, taking stuff that you've already got, repurposing it, changing the intent of it, putting in messaging that will resonate. We also need to be thinking about design, right? Because visuals, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We were just talking about video. I like to say video is worth 1,000,000 if a picture is worth 1,000. But design is really important. How can getting something engaging, eye-catching that stops somebody in their doom scrolling in whatever social platform they're in, it could be intimidating, especially if you have a small budget. So do you have any small design principles or tweaks that can instantly level up a nonprofit's brand to make them feel or look more credible?
Yeah, I love this question. And what you're talking about too is a theory called the halo effect. The halo effect really says people are going to perceive the value to be different than what it might actually be if it looks better, if it is presented better. And so as you think about the incredible work that an organization does, you can actually make it appear to be even more valuable. And this is a double-edged sword. But what I can tell you from experience is that there are so many organizations that are like, I don't want to look too polished because then my donors will think that I'm wasting money on X, Y, or Z. But here's what actually happens. The bigger donors that are interested in your mission are going to say, they have their stuff together. They know what they're doing. They are treating this like a business. And that is something that I can invest in. That is something that I want to put money into. And so here are, I would say probably 2.5 super quick. And I'm a designer by trade. That's how I started. I actually started in the promotional products industry. And so I made a lot of pens, a lot of t-shirts, a lot of random things. And there are kind of a few key things that nonprofits can, and I don't love the should language because should is shame language and all that jazz. But here are 3 things that I would say you should do. 1, pick a font and use it. Use it on everything. That feels really elementary, but here's what happens, especially as we have younger marketing and communications and fundraising folks. They go willy-nilly on whatever font is speaking to them today. Make that font big, make it legible, and make it so simple. Get rid of anything cursive, get rid of anything cutesy, just go simple. Simple sells every day.
Oh God, for the love of everything holy in the universe, the multiverse, the multiplex, whatever you want, do not use Comic Sans, please.
and here's the thing. Yes, we love to hate on Comic Sans. We love to hate on Papyrus. We love to hate on those things. But really, those fonts are screaming that we don't take ourselves very seriously. If you're a nonprofit who works with kids, guess what? You're going to get so much more traction out of a Montserrat or a Poppins or something along those lines that is bold and clear and probably better aligns than look at this cutesy font, right? Because what you're probably doing as a nonprofit who works with kids or young adults is you're probably trying to give them a great foundation on which to jump off of, right? Or figure out how they can better engage in relationships or just give them the tools that they need. And so to take yourself more seriously, 1, use a great font in a very simple font and use it all the time. The second big thing that I would say, choose a small color palette. You should not have 15 fonts in your color palette. I would argue to say, unless you have a designer on staff, you shouldn't have 4. You should have 2 to 3 really great colors in your color palette. And the other thing to be thinking about with that, ADA accessibility, beyond ADA accessibility, just accessibility in general. One of my mentors, who was a designer on the very first Google Maps, accessibility isn't for a specific demographic. Accessibility makes things more accessible for everybody, right? A ramp, right, on a sidewalk does not just make that more accessible for people who have limited mobility, like in wheelchairs. It also makes it easier for older folks. It makes it easier for people who just had a knee replacement. It makes it easier for folks who are just learning to walk, little toddlers, right, as they're coming up. That ramp isn't just for people in a wheelchair, it's for everybody, and it makes it easier. And so as you think about accessibility, as you think about how to welcome more people in, keep accessibility top of mind. And that goes along with the colors, because what we love to do is we love to have colors that are like 1 or 2 shades off from each other. The reality is that makes it really hard to read. And so my third tip is make an investment and work with an experienced designer who knows the nonprofit space, right? That could be somebody like Wow Digital. It could be somebody like Telwell that like understands this space in a slightly different way to say, hey, we know what you're trying to do, and we want to use design to create clarity and welcome more people in, create more accessibility to welcome those folks in, whether that's our digital storefront or our digital front door in our website, or it's our physical spaces. Accessibility matters to everybody, and it is a great use of a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s. What I can also tell you from experience is that ADA accessibility and just the various accessibility laws that exist in Canada and the United States, it pays dividends to take care of those ahead of time. Because as somebody who's worked with a lot of nonprofits, the number of nonprofits that have gotten in compliance notices from folks because their website wasn't accessible for one reason or another is incredible. And they end up paying a lot of money to try to defend it. And all of those things are super easily taken care of on the front end. That was like more of an answer than what you were actually looking for. And I get a little soapboxy, but like, I love accessibility, I love good colors, and I love a good font.
Absolutely. One of the other perks of being accessible and meeting those guidelines is it actually increases your search optimizations. So if you want to rank higher, if you want to provide better experience for your users, being accessible is one of those key things that you need to absolutely be taking into consideration. And look, we're partners with a couple of the big accessibility add-on platforms, and my approach to them is that those are enhancements, not fixes. You need to make sure your coding, your design, that is all up to par. And if you want to spend the money on one of these tools to enhance the accessibility, awesome.
Or, and I would even say it's a great use for AI. Use AI as a thought partner in this and say, hey, go through my website. I want to make sure it's as accessible to everybody as possible. Help me see my limitations. You're a WordPress shop, right?
Yep.
Awesome. We're a WordPress shop too. I love WordPress. You know, there are some of the big players out there like Theme Nectar and Elementor and some of those that are building accessibility tools right into it. And they're good. But to your point, you're spot on in saying like, those are great, like kind of check marks, but you need to make sure that you have the foundation really solid too.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're talking about design, we're talking about content. Web is definitely part of this conversation. So a lot of organizations, some of the smaller ones that we've worked with, they tend to think of their websites as a brochure. And I'm trying to reframe their mind and going, it's not a brochure. It's a marketing communications team that's working for you 24/7. And you need to be leveraging that in your favor. So when I have a workshop and a webinar that I run, in the webinar I talk about like design practices for making your website more engaging and storytelling, but I don't want to talk about me. Let's talk about you. In terms of design and storytelling choices, I'm going to rate my presentation that I do based on what you're going to say here. Let's see how adequate we are here. What could people do to make their website feel like it's telling more story, feel like it's more trustworthy and inspiring?
So I think that there are two big things to do. The first is on your about page, on your homepage, it likely has a lot of we language, us language. The first thing to do, make it you language. Talk about who you're talking to and get really crystal clear on who it is you're talking to. If your website is a resource for the people that you serve, that is one persona that you can go down. But more than likely, those folks are being connected to you through a variety of different agencies and connection points anyway. So your website is not actually the tool that they're finding resources on. Your website is a donation tool. It is a platform to welcome in donors for to amplify your mission. And so the first big one is really get clear on who you're talking to and what you're trying to say to them. Make them the hero of your website. So many nonprofits, we love to talk about ourselves, but get over yourself. In order to invite other people into the story, you really have to start talking about them. One of the ways that we suggest doing this, and I would love to riff on this if you do something similar, is sometimes we create persona-based websites versus service-based websites. So a persona-based website is when they get to your website, we navigate them off to their individual part. And so it could be hey, I'm in the case of a women's shelter in town. It's hey, I'm a mom and I need help right now, right? That is the big button on the right-hand side. We put it on the right-hand side because that's where people naturally read from, oddly enough, even though we read left to right. And on the left-hand side, it's I'm a supporter and advocate and I want to learn more about the impact that you're having. And so right off the bat, we're saying, hey, we're ready to meet you where you are. And then it takes them to their own individual experiences. Do you guys do something like that or ever play with that?
We definitely work with our clients to build out personas or avatars, whatever you want to call it. We take a look at demographic, geographic, and psychographics. If nobody knows what psychographics are, go listen to episode 16 of the podcast. I know it's from a couple of years ago, but I talk specifically about
psychosegmentation,
psychographics. Yeah. So go take a listen to that and it'll give you a lot of clarity around how to develop that and work with it. A lot of our clients, we have conversations around what does your avatar care about? How can we talk and engage with them? And even I do mentoring and coaching for other nonprofit agencies and consultants and whatnot. And what I tell all of them, I was at a networking event last night and we were talking about this. Stop talking about yourself because nobody gives a damn, right?
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. They care about them.
Right. So the question you need to ask yourself, everybody listening, whatever your mission statement is, whatever it says when somebody lands on your homepage or the top 5 pages of your site, go look at your analytics, okay? Ask yourself, so what? We go provide nutritious meals to children before school. So what, right? What's the point of that? It's a great idea. It's a great concept. You're helping people. You're doing something very valuable, but that's not engaging and compelling to me to want to do anything about it. It's all about you. So I love that you mentioned that.
David, one thing I'll give you props on and challenge that exact example in real time. You actually made that more human because that's just what you do, right? Most people are not talking about, we feed kids before school so that way they, go to school with their bellies full and their brains ready to go, right? You said that really beautifully. And honestly, if people could just get a little bit more human like that, they would change, because what they're doing is they say things like, we set children age 5 to 8 up for success so that way they can be better humans in the world of X, Y, and Z. And you're like, what does that mean? Right? And what you just did in there and what you did really beautifully is you're like, we feed them before school. Right. And I love and that's how my brain works too, where we just go straight into why do we exist? What is it that we do? How do we deliver it? Let me just throw in one more about websites, because I think the other big thing with websites that is missing all the time is in the Donald Miller world, in the story brand world, they call them cash registers. And this is what can you do? Your single most important thing for most nonprofit websites is a donate button. You need to get them to donate their dollars, to invest their dollars with you so that way you can further your mission. And so have that donate button, have it so many different places on your website, have it in the upper right-hand corner, but then also have several calls to action throughout. And then your opportunity and your obligation because we are in 2025, might be 2026 by the time this bad boy comes out, it is so easy. Like, there's not a good excuse not to have a good giving platform. There's so many good giving platforms out there, and there's so many great ways to give, right? Some of our favorites are like DonorDoc and GiveButter, but you can also integrate directly through a Stripe or a PayPal or something like that. Do not create friction when you're asking people for money, right? Like, there's a reason why when you go to a gas station or a convenience store, they'll take your money in whichever way. They'll take your check, they will take your cash, they will take your Venmo, they will take your credit card, they will take your Bitcoin, right? Make it so easy. And with all of the platforms out there today, there are oftentimes freemium versions of them, and there's just no reason not to have a great, seamless, easy giving experience. I don't know if you're a TikToker. Do you guys do TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're
you're
on
a
TikTok,
TikToker.
everybody.
Nice. Okay, we'll probably see this on TikTok. Make your checkout experience as easy as it is for me to like look at something, get excited about it, and check out on TikTok. Because I get to do it within 2 clicks. In 2 clicks, I can buy something. Make your giving experience just that easy and seamless, and you will be amazed at what happens.
A number of episodes ago, I don't remember which episode it was, I had Josh Bloomfield. He's the CEO of GiveCloud, which is a donation platform, and we were talking about gamifying donations.
Yes.
And not be like, donate a backpack for back to school, right? Get supplies to those that need it. Donate 5 backpacks, right? And try to, how many backpacks could I donate, right? What's the impact that I could have? So in terms, the one thing I would add to what you said about have donate everywhere, make the donate call to action relevant to the content that it's within, because at that point, it's logical. It's not just donate. It's, I don't know, buy school supplies or whatever, right? And I think that is what's going to make it more compelling for somebody to actually click on it.
I don't know what the kids say these days. I would say like retweet or like double tap on exactly what you just said. Like, that's part of the story, right? And what you're talking about too is this idea of mission related asks. We know that people don't like want to give to a general fund, right? Nobody wants to be paying the secretary or the administrative assistant of your nonprofit. But really, we know as the nonprofit professionals, we know and we understand that those are critical points of our mission in order to like fulfill our promise. And so one of the things that we recommend doing is use that mission related ask where we can say, hey, all you're trying to do is give people an idea of what the impact is. And so it could be like, this dollar amount does 5 backpacks, and this dollar amount pays for a camp, and this dollar amount does this. What you're not saying is you're not saying like this very specific thing goes to this very specific area, okay? All you're doing is giving them an example of what this could look like. And so don't get too bogged down in this idea that like $500 fills 5 backpacks. That means that all 500 of those dollars have to go to that. Your mission, if your mission is to fill those backpacks with school supplies, your administrative assistant is a part of that. Your fundraising people are a part of that. Your fundraising platform is all a part of that mission. And so to your point, David, you're spot on. It's like, make people see what their impact can do.
People are not stupid.
No.
They know there are administrative costs to doing the work. As a nonprofit, as a registered 501c3 or registered nonprofit charity in Canada, you have to disclose your expenses. Like, it's all public information. If anybody really wanted to know, they can open up your annual report and see what's going on. People aren't stupid, right? They know that there are shipping costs. If you're helping people in Uganda or something, right? There's costs for taking whatever it is that maybe you're getting clothes donated, you pack it into a barrel and you got to ship it. There's costs. It's not free. Maybe you can get some of that shipping stuff donated. That'll be really cool. But
that would be nice.
That's a whole other side of it. Max, it's been an awesome conversation. Maybe we'll have you back on another episode down the road and dig in a little bit more on some of these, but amazing concepts, thoughts, ideas around storytelling with purpose and rhythm and cadence and content creation and web. It's very clear you know what you're talking about. I hope the folks listening to you and I are getting some really great thoughts, some gold nuggets out of the conversation that we had. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you were to issue everybody a challenge, something you want them to do within 24 hours of listening to this episode, what would that challenge be?
My challenge is very simple. I want you to go to your website. I want you to go to the About page, and I want you to copy all of that content, throw it into the AI of your choice, and I want you to say, pivot this content from talking about me to talking about the people that we serve and our donors, and watch it do its magic. And in moments, you're going to see and you're going to feel a really significant difference. So the one thing, go change your About page tomorrow. Go feed that content back to your web designer, feed it over to your webmaster, whoever that is, and just say, hey, I got this. I got this stuff, and I'm figuring some stuff out, and I need to make them, whoever they are, the hero of this story, and we're the helpful guide.
Love it. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, Max, what do they need to do?
Oh, we're very easy to find. One, you can go to our website, wetellwell.com. We have a podcast called Tell Well the Podcast, where we're talking to mission-driven leaders from all over the country. We have a online and in-person nonprofit storytelling conference called Well Told. And if you just look for the Well Told conference on your favorite Googles, you will find it there. And I would love for you to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the socials at Max Kringen.
And you have a free resource for everybody. So if you've made it through to this part of the show, right, you've got a resource, the Seasons of Story framework and content calendar for 2026.
Yeah. So we have that content calendar that we talked about, the Seasons of Story. If you go to wetellwell.com/seasons, and we'll have a link in the show notes as well, I'm guessing, you can get that. And there are a combination of video walkthroughs as well as downloadable Google Sheets calendars for you to actually go and create your own. The other thing that I'm going to throw in, just because we've been talking about it, I'm going to give you access to our Tell Well AI brain. And that's really like, it's all the things that I nerd out about on a regular basis, and all of our favorite frameworks, from the hero's journey to start with why, and they're all baked in to this Tell Well AI brain. And use it, have fun with it, like try to figure out some new stories around it. It's a great resource, and our clients have been loving it. What I find a little bit scary is that sometimes it can be more me than me, where I actually like check my own work against it, and I'm like, does this sound like me? And they're like, well, actually, we need to make this more about the person you're talking to. And I'm like, damn it. So we'll throw that in as well.
Amazing value, everybody. I hope you have an awesome time playing around with the AI. Make yourself sound like Max. No, I'm just kidding.
Dangerous.
Max, thank you so much for joining in today. It's been great having you here on the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast. To everybody listening, if you want any of the links or resources that Max provided, just head over to our podcast page at nonprofitdigitalsuccess.com. Click on this episode for all of the details. And until next time, keep on being successful.